Sometimes, a seemingly innocent ride can become the ride to one's death. For some, what started as a pursuit of adrenaline turned into unspeakable tragedy, leaving scars. From catastrophic mechanical failures to human errors with devastating consequences, these incidents expose the terrifying side of these fun rides. These 5 chilling accidents will make you rethink every heart-pounding climb and stomach-dropping plunge, leaving you to wonder, how much risk is too much in the name of adventure? In the world of amusement parks, few stories evoke as much terror and heartbreak as the 1972 Big Dipper tragedy at Battersea Park, South London. What began as a day of innocent thrills and laughter turned into a nightmare of unimaginable horror, forever cementing this incident as the darkest chapter in roller coaster history. The Big Dipper, a towering wooden roller coaster, loomed over the park as a symbol of joy and exhilaration. On a sunny May afternoon, eager families and children queued up for their chance to ride its 3-car wooden train. The air buzzed with anticipation, but lurking beneath the surface was a hidden danger, a ticking time bomb that no one could have foreseen. As the train climbed the tracks, passengers felt the familiar rush of excitement. But then, without warning, disaster struck. The drive chain responsible for pulling the train along the ride suddenly failed. A jarring metallic screech shattered the air, followed by the sickening sensation of freefall as the train derailed. Chaos erupted in an instant. One of the carriages broke loose, dangling precariously over the edge of the track. The passengers inside were trapped, clutching anything they could reach to avoid being hurled into the void below. Their screams pierced the air, raw and filled with terror. Beneath them, onlookers froze in shock, helpless to intervene. And then, the unthinkable happened. Desperate to escape, some passengers climbed out of the stuck carts, clinging to banisters that should have been their lifeline. But the wooden rails, aged and neglected, splintered under their weight. With horrifying speed, they gave way, sending people plummeting to the ground below. The aftermath was a scene of carnage. Survivors later described it as a vision from a nightmare: twisted wreckage, the acrid smell of splintered wood, and blood, so much blood. Beneath the tracks, a crimson pool marked the spot where joy had turned to unspeakable tragedy. 5 children were dead, 16 others were injured, some so severely that their lives would never be the same. For those who lived through the ordeal, the horror didn't end with the crash. The survivors carried the weight of what they had seen and endured, their minds haunted by the screams, the falling bodies, the shattered lives. Post-traumatic stress gripped many of them, robbing them of sleep and peace, leaving scars that no doctor could heal. Investigations revealed the grim truth. The Big Dipper had been a disaster waiting to happen. Its aging structure and lack of proper maintenance had transformed it into a death trap. The ride, once the crown jewel of Battersea Park, was closed immediately, its hulking frame left to decay as a chilling monument to neglect. The tragedy sent shockwaves far beyond the boundaries of the park. Parents across the country questioned the safety of amusement rides. Lawmakers demanded stricter regulations, and amusement parks scrambled to implement new safety measures. But for the families of those lost, no rule or regulation could bring back their loved ones. To this day, the shadow of the Battersea Park, Big Dipper, looms large over South London's history. What should have been a day of thrills became a day of horror, a stark reminder of the fragile line between delight and disaster. The echoes of that dreadful moment linger in the memories of those who were there, an enduring tale of terror and heartbreak. And yet, even as the park faded into obscurity, its dark legacy remained. For some, it is a warning, a whispered tale of what happens when safety is sacrificed for spectacle. For others, it is a ghost story, a chilling reminder of how quickly joy can turn to tragedy. The deadliest roller coaster accident in U.S. history unfolded on a seemingly ordinary day in 1930, transforming a beacon of joy into a harrowing nightmare. At the heart of this tragedy was the Big Dipper, the pride of Krug Park in Omaha, Nebraska. Towering above the city's skyline, This wooden giant was more than just an amusement ride. It was a symbol of thrill and escape, drawing crowds from every corner of the region. But beneath its towering frame and rickety charm lurked a flaw that no one could see, one that would seal its fate in the most horrifying way imaginable. That summer day, the park was alive with laughter, music, and the excited chatter of families eager to experience its star attraction. As the Big Dipper's cars filled with eager passengers, the energy in the air was electric. The ride promised excitement, a heart-stopping journey filled with steep climbs and exhilarating drops. But this time, it would deliver something far darker. As the coaster began its ascent, the rhythmic clanking of the chain lift echoed like a drum roll, building anticipation. Riders gripped the sides of the cars, leaning into the thrill of the climb. At the peak, there was a brief moment of weightlessness, of exhilaration, and then came the descent, a rush of wind, speed, and adrenaline that sent cheers and screams soaring into the summer sky. But halfway through the ride, a jarring crack split the air, a sound so sharp and unnatural, it froze even the most seasoned thrill-seekers in their tracks. For a moment, the train teetered as if deciding its fate. Then, in a blur of chaos, the structure beneath the Big Dipper buckled. The cars lurched violently, and the train derailed entirely, plummeting 35 feet to the ground below. What followed was a scene of unspeakable horror. Screams of terror replaced cries of joy as metal, wood, and human bodies tumbled into a devastating heap. Onlookers rushed forward, desperate to help but paralyzed by the carnage unfolding before them. Dust clouded the air, mingling with the acrid scent of splintered wood and the metallic tang of blood. When the dust finally settled, the grim reality became clear. 4 lives were lost in the wreckage, people who had boarded the ride expecting nothing more than a fleeting thrill. Another 17 were injured, some so gravely that they would carry the physical and emotional scars for the rest of their lives. The Big Dipper, once a shining star of Omaha's amusement scene, now lay in ruins, its shattered frame a testament to human fragility and the thin line between joy and disaster. The accident cast a dark shadow over Krug Park. In the days that followed, the laughter and music that had defined its atmosphere were replaced by whispers of fear and sorrow. Families who had once flocked to the park now avoided it, unwilling to trust its promises of fun and safety. The Big Dipper, once an icon of entertainment, became a ghost of its former self, its silhouette looming over the park like a mournful reminder of what had been lost. Krug Park never recovered. Attendance dwindled, its once vibrant grounds slowly succumbing to neglect. By 1940, the park's gates were closed for good, its legacy consumed by the tragedy that had unfolded on that fateful day. And yet, the story of the Big Dipper endures, a haunting tale passed down through generations. For some, it's a chilling warning about the perils of unchecked ambition and the fragile nature of the structures we trust. For others, it's a ghost story, a whispered reminder of how quickly joy can dissolve into terror. Even now, the memory lingers, a shadow on Omaha's history. The Big Dipper, once a source of wonder, now stands as a symbol of catastrophe, a stark reminder that beneath the veneer of excitement, danger can lurk, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Mindbender was meant to be a marvel, a masterpiece of engineering and the crown jewel of the Fantasyland amusement park, nestled within the sprawling West Edmonton Mall. Billed as the world's safest triple-loop indoor roller coaster, it offered the thrill of a lifetime to riders who dared to take on its dizzying twists and turns. But on a fateful day in 1986, that promise of safety was shattered, and the ride descended into a nightmare that would claim 3 lives and leave its legacy stained with tragedy. The day began like any other at Fantasyland, the air alive with the hum of arcade games, the delighted squeals of children, and the rhythmic clatter of rides. In the heart of it all, the Mindbender loomed, its green steel frame twisting high above the bustling crowds. For thrill-seekers, it was irresistible, a high-speed plunge into adrenaline-fueled ecstasy. But for a group of 4 friends boarding its sleek cars that day, it would become a harrowing journey into chaos. The ride started without incident, the coaster smoothly accelerating into its first loop. The passengers screamed with exhilaration, their bodies pressed into their seats as the car rocketed through its second inversion. But just as the train entered its third loop, disaster struck. A sickening screech of metal tore through the air as the rear car wrenched free from the track. In an instant, the precision-engineered ride was reduced to utter bedlam. The front cars lurched to a halt, stranded in the middle of the loop, leaving their occupants suspended upside down, blood rushing to their heads as they dangled helplessly. The riders screamed in terror, the world spinning around them as they clung desperately to their harnesses. For the 4 passengers in the detached car, however, there was no time to scream. Their car careened wildly, gaining horrifying speed as it hurtled toward a steel pillar. At 63 miles per hour, it struck with devastating force, sending its occupants flying through the air like rag dolls. They landed on the cold concrete floor of the mall below, their bodies crumpling under the impact. The scene was one of chaos and horror. Shoppers and bystanders froze in shock as the realization of what had just happened sank in. Emergency crews raced to the site, but for 3 of the passengers it was too late. Their lives had been snuffed out in an instant. The sole survivor, a young man who had boarded the ride alongside his friends, was found broken but alive. His body bore the scars of the crash, shattered legs, a fractured pelvis, a crushed shoulder, and a litany of other injuries. Every rib on his left side was snapped, but the physical pain was only part of his torment. As he recovered, he was forced to grapple with the emotional agony of losing 3 of his closest friends in the disaster. For years, he would depend on prescription painkillers and, later, medical marijuana to endure the chronic pain that lingered as a reminder of that fateful day. The investigation that followed pointed to a grim conclusion. The Mindbender's malfunction was the result of a manufacturer defect, a catastrophic failure in the coaster's design. Fantasyland responded by shutting down the ride for a year, implementing rigorous safety upgrades to restore public trust. Eventually, the Mindbender reopened, its sleek frame unaltered, its triple loops once again inviting thrill seekers. But for those who remembered the tragedy, its shadow could never be erased. Even now, the story of the Mindbender lingers like a ghost in the annals of amusement park lore. What was meant to be a symbol of daring excitement became a chilling cautionary tale of hubris, human error, and the fine line between thrill and disaster. Its green frame may still twist high above the West Edmonton Mall, but for those who know its history, the ride is more than just a roller coaster. It is a grave marker, a haunting reminder of lives lost, and a moment when joy turned irrevocably to sorrow. The Big Thunder Mountain Railroad at Disneyland, an iconic ride where fantasy and thrill collide. For decades, it has invited guests to embark on a simulated runaway mine train, whisking them through dark tunnels and steep curves. But in 2003, the magic turned sinister, leaving an eerie mark on the park's history that some say lingers in the shadows of the attraction to this day. It started as any other ride. Passengers settled into their seats, the train's whistle echoed, and the locomotive began its familiar climb. Yet, somewhere deep within the labyrinth of rock and tunnel, something went wrong. Terribly wrong. What exactly caused the ride to falter remains a chilling question. In the stifling darkness of the tunnel, the locomotive detached from the cars behind it. The disconnection sent the train into chaos, and the front of the ride derailed with violent force. Passengers, once screaming in delight, found themselves gripped by terror. The front car, carrying those closest to the impact, suffered the most. Rescue teams would later speak of a scene few could have anticipated: metal twisted like paper, debris scattered across the tunnel floor, and silence broken only by panicked cries in the distance. One passenger, seated near the front, did not make it out alive. Emergency responders labored to free his body from the mangled wreckage, an image that would haunt witnesses long after the ride was cleared. Others, though alive, bore visible scars of the accident, including deep cuts and fractured ribs. But what stayed with many were not the physical injuries, but the psychological ones. The memories of being trapped in the pitch-black cavern for nearly an hour, helpless and surrounded by the whispers of what had just occurred. Even after the ride reopened, following a rigorous investigation and repairs, questions remained. What caused the train to derail so violently? Was it a hidden flaw in the design? A fateful oversight in maintenance? Official reports attributed the tragedy to mechanical failure. But whispers among park-goers suggest something more inexplicable. Some visitors claim to feel an unsettling shift in the air when the train enters its tunnels, as if the shadows themselves hold on to the memory of that day. Others report strange sensations, an unusual stillness, an inexplicable chill, as the train barrels through the cavern where the accident occurred. Is it imagination, a trick of the mind in the dim light, or something more? Today, Big Thunder Mountain stands tall, its iconic whistle echoing through the park. Yet, those who know the story tread cautiously, their excitement tinged with an unspoken dread. What begins as a thrill can so easily twist into terror, and sometimes the past leaves echoes in the present. The wooden roller coaster at Lagoon Amusement Park in Utah carries an unsettling legacy, whispered about by those who know its past. From 1934 to 1989, it became the stage for 3 eerily tragic deaths, each more chilling than the last. What makes these incidents so unnerving is not a pattern of mechanical failure, but the strange, almost fateful circumstances surrounding them. The first death occurred in 1934, but the exact events remain hazy. A young man standing in his car, a sudden fall, and the haunting sound of his body striking the beams below. In 1946, a maintenance worker was struck and killed by a moving car while performing repairs on the scaffolding, the details of which remain frustratingly unclear. And then, in 1989, a 13-year-old girl fell 35 feet to her death, her apparent attempt to stand up sealing her fate. Each incident seems shrouded in an air of inevitability, as if the coaster itself held a malevolent will. How did these moments of recklessness unfold? What led these individuals to their fatal missteps? Some point to human error, while others whisper about darker forces, an unseen curse, or the lingering presence of those who never left. Even the ride's design seems to invite questions. Its towering wooden frame, creaking and groaning with age, casts long shadows across the park. For some, it's merely the charm of a classic coaster. For others, it's a sinister reminder of the lives it has claimed. Standing in line, the wind seems to whistle through the beams like a distant cry. Is it just the breeze, or is it something more? While the official explanations offer closure, human error, poor judgment, an unlucky confluence of events, the stories continue to evoke unease. What compels certain rides to attract tragedy while others remain untouched? Is it coincidence, or could there be a deeper, more mysterious force at play? Today, the coaster stands as both a relic of the past and a silent witness to the unexplained. Those who ride it may feel an inexplicable tension as they ascend the first hill or take that sharp turn into the unknown. Some say the air feels heavier near the spots where the accidents happened, while others swear they've heard faint cries or whispers lost among the clattering tracks. The wooden roller coaster remains, unyielding in its presence, but its legacy is more than just its towering structure or thrilling drops. It's the unshakable feeling that something unseen lurks within its timbers, a lingering shadow of the tragedies it has borne. Ride it if you dare, but as the wheels clatter to life and the coaster ascends, you might find yourself wondering, are you riding a thrill or tempting fate?